Mary Ann Clyde,
Hi, I'm Lorna McGill.
and we're here with the Isn't She Amazing podcast. And Lorna's got this great guest for us today to introduce.
I
Lorna.
am so excited. This is Jaimie Hutchison, and she is a work-life balance expert. So I can't wait to hear what she can tell us. She is the director of WorkLife Office at Michigan State University, and she has a bachelor's degree in psychology. And she's also married and has a teenage son. And so we can't wait. Work-life balance is such a challenge for so many people. So we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that. So my first question is, how do you define work-life balance?
That's a really good question. I just wanted to add that my master's degree in community counseling is where I draw a lot of my foundational work from in work-life well-being, because it helps you understand people and their motivations. And so part of what drew me to this work was looking at how do we do that in our work and how do we do that in our life. So part of work-life well-being and work-life balance is a term we use a lot, but the term balance is really tricky because it sets us up to be failed a little bit in one way or the other. So I try to say work-life harmony or work-life integration or work-life synergy.
I love to hear that because I believe the same. Like work-life balance is a tricky. Do you ever have that really? Work-life well-being?
Not so much, because if something comes up in our personal life that's out of our control, it throws us off, or vice versa in our work life. And so we're not able to be really effective. We're always trying to catch up because there's so much out of our control. So if I say integration, it puts me in charge. If I say harmony, that's kind of the goal. So we are looking at our work aspects like job satisfaction, a supportive work environment, manageable workloads, reasonable hours, and professional growth. And then we look at our life, our really important personal relationships, our hobbies and things we like to do for fun, those important things, time to truly rest physically and emotionally, and then having personal time. So it's really that harmony or flexibility, the ability to adapt and manage both of those things in a way that we're a fully healthy person.
And so this is totally individual for each person, that there's no kind of formula for, you have a certain percentage of time to rest, certain percentage of time for your family. You sort of have to figure it out, what works for you, your family, your sense of wellness and wholeness, and so forth. Is that what I'm getting from you?
Absolutely, because just like you and I, we have a number of identities we carry. I'm a mom, I'm a spouse, I'm the daughter of aging parents, I'm a breast cancer survivor, I'm a volunteer, I have all of these things, and we all do. We have things that we carry around. So it's definitely individual. And different phases and stages of your life will have different things to navigate. When people are caregivers, they have less time for themselves, right? They're putting other people first often, which we do as women in the workplace and at home. And so I think, yeah, it's important to think individually and know that it changes over our lifetime.
Now,
Our market is mostly women over 50. And as you mentioned, like we go through transitions kind of like they're a revolving door.
Yeah.
You still have a child at home. My babies are 41 this year, and so
mine
they're
just left a few years ago.
at over 50, it seems like, you mentioned breast cancer, you mentioned changing your aging parents, so you're kind of still in that sandwich generation, and then you got the job over here, and you're, bringing home the bacon, frying it up in a pan, you're doing it all at one time, and that's, I think, one of the tricks of being over 50 is there's so many changes and so many adjustments.
And big one. They're big. They're very
lot.
big life adjustments.
Yeah. And you've been through quite a bit. So what tricks have you learned? Specifically because you had some severe challenges.
So that's a really good question. I think they're more than tricks. I think they're a lifelong journal of what works for us. And I'm sure you can each relate to that. December 22nd, I turned 50. And so definitely looking at like, I've been alive half a decade. What have I learned from that? And I think there are a few ways to answer this question. I think the first way is just thinking about how do I manage my work-life harmony? The first thing I do is a lot of reflection. So regular self-assessments to see, am I spending time in the things that really make me happy and that are important to me? So understanding those personal, professional needs and goals. The second way is prioritization. Am I really, if the most important thing to me are my family, have I had time to spend with them and to have quality time together and to know what's going on in their lives? The third thing, it's really important, and that's those boundaries, having really strong boundaries. But I can tell you, it's something we all struggle with, especially women, putting a lot of other people's needs first. And I've come to a point in my life where I've gotten good boundaries and really strengthened those. And that helps me maintain my mental, emotional well-being, as well as continue to do the things that I do well. The fourth thing is a really inclusive calendar. It's making sure that every place where I need to be, every appointment is somewhere where I can access it. It's a practical thing, but without my calendar, I would forget really important things. So I'll put things on my calendar. I have a friend, just started chemotherapy for breast cancer. And so I put that date on, check in, see how they're doing. Check in on this family member, make sure to find out how Hayden's doing in college. That's my team. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that calendaring to make sure that things are top of mind when I start the day. And
It's
then,
interesting you say
yeah.
that real quick. I just want to add, I spoke with someone this morning that's just retired, and she said she schedules time now for her. Like,
Yes.
she actually puts that appointment for herself on the calendar, which is
And
new for her.
yeah, what does that say though? How many of us say when we're retired? You know, I just had a battle with breast cancer, and there were points that I didn't know if I was going to have a retirement. And so if we don't make that time for ourselves now and what's important, we
Right?
could miss it completely. So I don't want to put things off that are important. I want them even in little bits and ways into my everyday life. And I'm lucky enough to have really worked and studied in well-being and best practices in work life. And I try to apply that knowledge to action. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but I definitely try to apply what I consult on to myself. Like today, I'm working from home. I didn't get a lot of steps. So I'm like, oh, before this meeting, I'm just gonna walk around for 10 minutes and clear my mind, right? So how do we even put little things into our day? But those are some of the ways that I do it. I think the reflection is a big one.
Well, it sounds to me like relationships are really important to you. And since you had battled with breast cancer, you're very aware of when your friends, you had said you'll check in with their chemo appointments and things like that. And I know Lorna's really conscious of that kind of stuff as well. She'll text friends regularly. She'll make efforts to ask them about, their doctor's appointment or, how to go with.
But I always keep it all in here, in my noggin. So I should really put it on my calendar to remember. But I think, that is important even for other people's well-being in my mind, because it does help to know someone's thinking about you when you're going through a hard time.
Definitely, I agree with that.
And that kind of goes through like the energy you're putting out in the universe, that you're it's kind of flowing and helping someone.
The other thing about me is I do really good thinking late at night, early in the morning. And so nobody wants a text from me at 5 in the morning. So if I put it on my calendar, it'll let me do it at a time when people are actually awake and functioning.
You don't want to wake them up.
Jaimie, you can
Right.
text us at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Because we're awake.
And we're up.
Okay, good. That happens to a lot of us during perimenopause and menopause. So there's a lot of us over 50 that are up at weird times in the day and night.
Well, there's menopause and there's puppies.
Oh, that too, yeah.
So here's on your list of expertise, it is probably about 20 subjects long. So, but key in that list of expertise, you work with workplace wellness programs. What does that look like in your life? What do you do at your workplace? Do you go into other workplaces to help them, or do you have people come in How does that work and why is that important?
So yes, to all of the above. In my day job, my full-time position, I regularly consult. We have 13,000 employees at Michigan State University in 72 different industries that work every job pretty much you can imagine. It's like running a city. And so we do a lot of different things at Michigan State to promote work-life well-being and just general well-being. And then I do consult with nonprofits and other companies in this area. I'm lucky enough to be president-elect for the College and University Work-Life Family Association. So I have peers across the country that I can talk to and make sure I'm getting the best practices from them as well. And then definitely in my volunteer role, I'm really fortunate to have a really strong community around me. And there's lots of things that I do. I don't know if you want some examples of things that we do.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Tell us a
So,
story.
Yeah, we love stories.
yeah, exactly. So one of the things that we work really hard at Michigan State is to raise awareness. And I think this is really important for any workplace, is that we get so busy. We sometimes get in this hustle culture where we're so busy, we don't have time to reflect or to prioritize or to think about what's really important. For example, this week I've had 2 of my routine health appointments. We kind of put those off, right? We get the kids' appointments scheduled, the spouse, the aging parents. We make sure everybody's taken care of at work, and we sometimes don't get our own routine health appointments. So one of the things I try to do is raise awareness through my personal stories, through workshops, and inviting people in. You would ask about that. There are experts that we bring in to talk about different topics. And I think that's really important because a lot of times, supervisors have such a huge impact on the workplace. They say that supervisors, and new research came out that supervisors have the same impact as your spouse on your mental health. And so if supervisors don't have best practices, or don't know what to do or what issues are happening, then we can't really address it. So raising awareness is really important. If you've ever had a bad boss, you know what I'm talking about, how much it can affect your mental health.
Yeah, give us some examples.
Yeah, so I think of my brain as a bunch of intersecting wheels, right? Think of a clock, how they all go together. So if my teen is struggling, that's Hayden. I have a little Hayden wheel that's never going to stop. You don't leave it at home, right? So it's going to go to work with me, but if things are taken care of, if I'm supported, I'm going to be able to slow that wheel down. If you have a toxic work environment or a supervisor that's not understanding, your wheels will be trying to overwhelmed that you really can't be good at much of anything. And you all know after a really tough day at work or something happens, you go home and you take whatever that stress is into your home with your family, with your friends, with your loved ones, to the restaurant when you're interacting with the server. So workplaces really have a huge impact on our well-being, and those supervisors hold. That's one of the ways I try to think about it, is if our brain is full, trying to navigate conflict or being micromanaged or being microaggressed against or something, it's really difficult to then reflect, focus, or go home feeling like you've accomplished something in your good space.
Okay, so here's a real kind of general question, but it might be specific too. It's like, what do you think when we're thinking of our own personal wellness, which is we have to base everything on, because if mama ain't happy, nobody happy. And so what are some of the, maybe the top 3, if you can boil it down to 3 things we need to remember to keep our own personal wellness honed?
Oh, that's a really complicated question. So let me give you
Welcome.
the top one. I would say in the workplace is having policies that are promoting workplace well-being and ensuring that people are held accountable for how they interact with people and treat people. So I would say that's definitely number 1. If we don't have policies, if we don't have health and well-being in every policy, in everything that we do, that's where we will lose things. Personally, for ourselves, I think it comes back to those boundaries. Can you have transparent communication with people? Can you set boundaries? At the same time, we know women are more highly microaggressive expressed against women of color even more so. So everyone's carrying around some equity issues. So how can we be sure that we're understanding our entire workforce? And how can we advocate for ourselves while still being professional, right? And boundaries can help with that a lot. And then I think, we have the basics, sleep, hydration,
Huge.
eating well, moving, and then add to that fun. Like we have to have fun in every day. Every day we have to have something that lights us up and gets us excited. So I know I kind of tricked your question with three, added some more, but I think we have to have the policies, we have to have our individual basic health needs met, and we have to think about the intersectionality and, we all go to work every day carrying around things we don't talk about at work. So having empathy and values-based leaders is just so important to making sure that we're treating each other in a way that we need to be treated, that we deserve to be treated.
Can you explain to our audience what a microaggression is?
Yeah, microaggressions, well, they're not small to people, they're large. I can give you examples from my work life, previous history.
Yeah.
I work in an institution of higher education. I have a master's degree, not a PhD. And I was in a meeting with all my peers that had different degrees, and somebody said, well, Jaimie doesn't have a PhD, she should surely take the notes. Like based on your level of education, not your position or what you're contributing, you should be the note taker. So that's an example. So there are statements that people make that are offensive for people that have an accent. For example, my mother-in-law is from Brazil, always asking things like, where are you from? Or speaking loudly to them, to people that sound different. So there are ways that we talk to or act to people that have to do with some aspect of their identity. So women have that happen to them more. I'm sure in meetings, you might have experienced it before. You give an idea and then someone else might take credit for it. A senior person or a man, that's pretty common in the workplace. So it really, depending on the intersection of our identities, I identify as working with workplace disabilities, with disabilities. So how, if people know that, do they treat me differently or say things differently or not ask me for something? But it's those comments that people make, and they're not necessarily easy to navigate, but when your identity is questioned, you know where it's coming from.
And I think that's probably something that a lot of us do, even not thinking that you're,
Yeah,
where are you from, or just because they have an accent or, but it does, Amy, says that, it's like, little cuts that you are getting.
well, and I think we think, oh, we're curious. If you're really curious about what their background is, do you ask that to every person? Or is there some kind of bias coming into play? And that's what we need to ask ourselves. Why am I curious? Is it that I love other countries? And how could I phrase that question? I love to travel. I hear an accent. Do you
Yeah.
mind sharing where you're from? I grew up in Michigan. Like, there's ways we can do and say things that they're the true to our core, but there's things we say all the time that we really probably don't reflect on.
So Jaimie, say perhaps somebody feels discounted by something somebody says, very subtle, not intentional, but it sliced you a little bit. How do you propose that the person who feels offended respond or not respond, or maybe out loud, maybe not, maybe in their head? How do they handle something like that, in your opinion, in a healthy way?
I think it really depends on their work environment. If they have a psychologically safe work environment where they can bring all of their identities to work, feel safe at work, supported, know they're not going to, if they make a mistake, they're not going to be penalized for being different, then they probably have the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation. Or maybe bringing in research or evidence or a trainer that could share something with everyone. I'm lucky that I've been able to go to a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings from different perspectives, and I continue to grow every year, every training. So I think that can be really good. I think if you don't have a safe work environment, it probably builds up because you have fear that something you say, you're then going to be labeled a certain way, the angry woman, or always having an issue, or you'll have all of those fears, and it makes it hard. And the truth is, we can't self-care our way out of racism. for these kind of bias. So there is a responsibility for overall training in the workplace. We can demonstrate allied behavior. So if I heard someone say something to you, maybe I could go say something to them. I noticed that you use these pronouns. These are their pronouns that they go by. I don't know if you knew that, but I just want to make sure, like, we can support each other in those ways. If it is a safe place, I have stepped in it. We are all going to step in it and say something. And right in the minute I said it in that meeting of 16 leaders, I knew I had said it. And right after the meeting, I went up to the person and right away said, I use this phrase that's been in the vocabulary of America, but now I realize that phrase could have really been offensive to me. I just wanted to apologize. And the person said, I knew you were going to come up to me. I know your heart. I knew you were going to come up to me. And about 3 other people in that meeting should be coming up to me for things they said. And so just having that conversation, they showed me grace. They showed me compassion. They showed me faith. And I was just feeling like, how could I have said this phrase that we all say, probably many of us say, but because of the person's unique situation, it's the first time that phrase hit me in a different way. And so I think, there's no real right answer except to try to have boundaries, to have a well workplace, and to do this on a policy level and a training for everyone level. Who comes to the training about these things? It's usually people that care about them, but people that might not see them as a priority might not come. So I really do think approaching these things so everyone gets the opportunity is really important.
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think it's important too to encourage people to take personal responsibility for how they react and how they feel, because not everybody has the same training, not everybody has the same
Right.
background, not everybody has the same education in culture and other things like that. So what I like to do too is if somebody says something that kind of makes me go, excuse me, but it kind of, I find myself asking myself, when have I done that?
Mhm.
Totally, I like to think I have great intentions all the time, and I think most people do too. Not everybody. And, but I think for the most part, people have good intentions, and it's good in the trainings. I'm sure you do this. Just encourage people to say, hey, it's okay for you to just feel that and then understand that that's that person's issue, not yours. The
Well,
fact,
and things can trigger us, right?
right?
And sometimes I remember snapping at that person that told me about the notes. I said it in a tone, I'm like, that's really rude. And I'm like, ooh, that wasn't the best way to respond, reflecting back. So sometimes we say things. So what I try to do is reflect on it and understand there's what was the person's intent and what was the impact, because both are important. And how can I have a conversation with the person if it's safe? Sometimes you just have to let it go. Like, pick your battles but oftentimes if it's happening to you, it's happening to others. So by saying something, you can help that person, just like people have helped me learn how to be better, say better, do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the beginning of our talk, you had mentioned that something I think is a really good habit, and Lorna and I talk about this a lot because it gives you a foundation of building yourself up. You had said, I do things that make me happy. I mean, I
Mhm.
even encourage people to make
Yeah.
lists of things, because in the moment, you don't want to do something that's going to make you happy. You want to be angry and offended at that moment because it feels good. But so do you actually make a list also that you kind of, maybe in your journal or things that I could go pet my dog, or I could go take a walk outside, do you do that or encourage that in any of your
I,
trainings?
I try to look at my whole calendar and say, what does my week look like? What am I getting and what am I missing? So this week I have 2 dinners with friends. There's people that I wanted to catch up with. We had COVID year, cancer year. So for 3 years, I feel like I've been off the map. And so making these intentional steps to reconnect with people. So
Mhm.
this week I have 2 dinners with friends and I can't wait. But I try to look and say, what is my calendar missing? Am I spending time with people I love and care about? Am I doing something that makes me feel full? Not as a mom, not as an employee, not as a spouse, not as a caregiver, me. for my own needs as a person who's worthy of that. And I try to make sure I get that in there sometimes, like what makes me happy. It could be going to the pool and doing a Zumba class. It could be going for a walk with a friend. It could be watching trashy TV like that. If that's what you need that day, that's okay. So I do really work hard to take everything I've learned and implement it. It's way easier to talk about and teach than do, and I don't always get it right. But by making it those intentional steps, I get it more balanced more of the time than if I wasn't.
But it's funny, I wrote a blog recently on intentional TV watching. I was intentional that day about binge watching. I don't do
Absolutely.
it's like it's a luxury. I don't do it often, but I thought today I'm just in a funk and I'm just gonna watch mindless TV because sometimes you need that. And I sometimes, you know, I'm sure you see this with your employees or just your friends, even as women, we don't give ourselves a lot of slack. And when we're a caregiver, and if we're not, I think the one thing we forget is if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not really all that good for everyone else around us.
No, that's one of my favorite quotes. It's Maya Angelou. If we don't work, nothing else will. That says it all. Like if I'm not healthy and well, I can't be a good mom, a good caregiver, a good friend, a good employee. I can't be creative. I can't make an impact. Like I'm not going to do that. So sometimes we have to think of it that way. Hopefully we think of it that we're worthy of it. But sometimes we have to give ourselves that, I can't be a good mom, or if I'm not well, whatever works. I mean, whatever the inspiration is, it's going to get you to think about yourself is really important.
And
Yeah.
Laura, as you have a, a cute little thing that you have also, I think you wrote a blog on it. You did on glimmers.
Oh yeah, glimmers. Yeah, I love glimmers.
I love glitter.
When I go for a walk, I really pay attention. And it's interesting. I did that with a friend of mine is when we went for a walk once, she showed me this. I used to have it. I don't know what I did with it, but it was a piece of a mushroom and you looked at the tree and it just looked like it had like kind of cuts in it. And she said, why don't you come over and look at it? And it was this beautiful mushroom that was like growing on the tree. And that is almost like the basis of when I walk or when I'm looking and I think, what are you totally missing? Like you just glance at something and don't really pay attention, but when you really look closely, it is something that brings you a little joy.
I love that. That's mindful, being in nature with mindfulness, intention. I have a rhino tree. I walk on campus and right behind the library, there's a tree that has this pattern. It looks like a rhino cut into it. And it's like, that's my rhino tree. It's a place to go. We have a tree called the resilience tree that was hit by lightning and still stands half a tree. And just noticing those things and thinking, how has that tree stood over 100 years and happened what it needs to be fully rooted? Like being an animal, like I take pictures of nature when I walk. It's really a great way to connect with nature. If you use all of your senses, which allows you to get out of your head and stop thinking about everything you have to do. So that's great practice. I love glitter.
You know, it's funny, nature really does give us a sense of awe and stuff like that. And Lorna knows I have this crush on the constellation Orion.
Ryan.
Whenever I see him, you know, I can see him at the same time every morning. And although this time of year he's more shows up later at night, but every time I see him, it's like, hey,
That's my friend.
I know. It's just like, and I'm thinking, why do I have this crush on Orion? But I think it's like you and your rhino tree. It's there. It's
Yeah.
something that's
Constant.
constant, right? And and the constancy, I think, really helps us with our sense of grounding and
Yes, absolutely. I get grounded in nature for sure. Get that from my family, many generations of sportsmen and farmers. And I know that's in my genes, that's in my roots, is like connecting with nature. And I work on a beautiful campus. And so even if you don't have a lot of green space around, you can find things that will make you smile.
Oh, that's neat. Before we wrap up though, tell us a little bit about your campus and what it's like. It sounds beautiful, and so I'm wondering
It is
how these
beautiful.
are there. And
So it was named Tree Campus USA in 2019. So we're an agricultural college at our roots. So we have a lot of beautiful trees and if you're my dog, that's my work life coming in. I locked her out of the room so she wouldn't work. Now she's barking at me. But I walk and there's a river, there are trails. We have a wonderful infrastructure planning and facilities, people that keep our campus so maintained. But there are even little notes on the trees so you can see where it came from, what kind of tree it is. So when I walk campus, I read about campus history, I read about the trees. We have beautiful gardens, the Beal Botanical Garden. I go and look and learn new things and just, find that centering place. In winter, sometimes I walk the halls and look at pictures. I have a get away from it all wall in my office. I think everyone should get one. Put your favorite pictures of nice, relaxing, peaceful places that you've been. That way, if you do live in Michigan where it's gray and winter, I can turn to my get away from it all wall and just remember that that's something again.
Such a great idea.
Yeah, but it's beautiful. It sounds like there's a lot of little nooks and crannies to find some glimmers there for you and
Definitely.
students and
Plus,
everything.
I can't talk about MSU without talking about our squirrels and our ducks. And the squirrels we have everywhere, they're fascinating. And I literally watch them when they make nests. They're very nuts and they're just, if you pay attention, they're really interesting creatures.
Well, and they take you off your stress moments because
Yeah.
if you can just take a minute to watch a deer standing there, or the duck floating in the water, or just you find out that they just are. I think of my dogs all the time of they're just so innocent and pure and they just they love you, no matter
Yeah.
what. And so I think animals are just so healing and awe-inspiring and a great way to get rid of stress. So
Definitely.
I love that. And they just give you
Yeah.
stress when you lock them out of the door anyway.
She's like, what are you doing, Mom? But our dog was huge for our family when my teen was struggling with anxiety and depression. And I was going through cancer when we were locked all together during COVID. Like our dog was the one that could make us all happy, get us out of the house for a walk. So I
Yeah.
think, we have to remember that we're all connected and animals, they're gonna see that unconditional love that we experience. So if we could give each other a little bit more of that unconditional love, the world would be a better place.
What a great way to end.
I was going to think perfect little piece of
Perfect.
wrap that up. So Jaimie, how wonderful it was to chat with you. And thanks for the little bits of pieces of things that we can do to take care of ourselves at home and in the workplace. So it's been great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. It's great having you.
Anything left, Lorna, that you wanted to say or ask before we go?
No, I think it's just wonderful to have you, and I think our audience will have lots of good tidbits to carry forward.
And if
Oh,
I could just say one last thing, that's please schedule your routine annual health appointments. That's what saved my life, and it could save yours too. So make yourself a priority and get those annual health checkups.
thank
Yes.
you. Good reminder.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, we'll see you next time on Isn't She
Bye.
Amazing?